This is week 2, video 1 on chapter 3 in short, which is Milstead's Health Policy and Politics, on problem identification and agenda setting, what rises to a policymaker's attention. Nursing has been voted the most respected profession in the United States for 23 straight years. We are also the largest health profession with 4 million nurses compared to about 1.1 million physicians. Unfortunately, for most of our history, we have not been able to get our stuff together to advance the issues important to us to the level of the political agenda of Congress or state legislatures. Until 1991, the American Nurses Association was located in Kansas City, Missouri. In about 1991, 1992, the organization moved to Washington, D.C. so that the policy arm of the organization could more effectively lobby the issues that are important to us as a profession to Congress. Introduction, how do you get a policymaker's attention? Basically, that's not always an easy thing to do. Policy making is basically problem solving on a large scale. We must get the attention of policy or lawmakers for our problem or idea solution to be considered and rise to the level of consideration as part of the organization's or agenda, whether that be Congress or state legislatures or whatever body that we're dealing with. Agenda setting, your issue will not be considered until you can move it to the agenda so that it would be considered. A focus on healthcare related politics, just like the nursing process, but on a large scale, is an important thing. It helps make things a little easier for us because healthcare is considered an important part of our society. But we want to find solutions to our problem, and we look to the ANA and other organizations to set some of these agendas. And you can go to the ANA, the ONA, and other organizations' websites to see what they consider to be their policy issues. As nurses, we're used to solving problems. This is just problem solving or the nursing process on a much greater scale. There are some barriers to change when we think about our wishes, the policies, the ideas, the solutions that we are pushing. Sometimes there's an opposing organization or group that might have a stronger voice or more frequently has more money, unfortunately, so that their ideas get pushed through over ours. An example would be in the past, the American Medical Association, if there was a healthcare policy and nursing had a solution and the American Medical Association had a solution, they used to always just go with what the doctors thought and not consider our stance. But that has been changing. Some other barriers is a concept called bounded rationality. Bounded rationality basically means that you might have the good intention of looking at all of the possible options, all the possible solutions, but you're limited by time, your cognitive ability to multitask. There's too much information. There's not enough information. These things cause us to not continue to look at all of the options. And another barrier is called satisficing. And basically what that is, it's when you only search for possible solutions until you find one that is an acceptable solution, and then you don't go any further. You just go with the first acceptable solution that you come up with. because you don't have a lot of time. And the problem with that is that you're probably losing the best solution or the best ideas if you just settle on the first acceptable thing that comes along. And then the other thing you need to remember is the incremental nature of change. Change is a difficult and often slow process, especially in bureaucracy like the government. They're bound by not just rules and regulations, but traditions, and these often make change difficult. And because of oppositional factors, not oppositional, sorry, factors, sometimes we have to settle for a piece of the solution rather than the whole solution at one time. We have to take bites off of it each time the legislature is convening. We can't do it all with one bill or policy. Levels of the political agenda. The agenda universe is all possible ideas, all possible solutions, everything that anyone could ever want to fix a problem. That's the agenda universe. There can be all possibilities. Then the next step down is called the systemic agenda. Those are all issues commonly perceived as meriting public attention. But I would add not just meriting public attention, it has to be within the jurisdiction of the legislature or governmental authority. Just like we have a scope of practice, politicians have jurisdiction or their level of authority. They can't work external to that. So if your idea involves things that they do not have any say in, it's not part of their jurisdiction, then they're not the body that's going to help you get that policy enacted, not get that on that agenda. The institutional agenda are items that have risen to the attention of the body. Now, this has made the cut. It's caught their eyes. It's now something that they are seeing as potential. And then the decision agenda, that's the true cut. Those are the things that had risen to the institutional agenda that people have decided they're going to make their cause. They are going to move forward by proposing a policy bill or eventually to go into a law. That's when somebody has adopted that as part of their agenda to put on that governing body's docket for whatever convening time they're in. Okay, a case study of people getting change within a framework is in the book. There's a few. I'd read the case studies if I were you, even if you just kind of scan the chapters, because they are interesting and they hit the heart of what we're trying to learn in this course. Okay, the first example is the Community Aging in Place Advancing Better Living for Elders Capable model. It's a nurse-led initiative. Interestingly enough, the nurse who led it was a lobbyist before she became a nurse. What this is different. This is solving a problem because it's addressing many senior citizens' inability to take care of their basic needs and prevent admission to a long-term care facility. Traditionally, to do that, we focus on function. We basically have nursing and the therapies work together to get the person as functional as possible in their activities and instrumental activities of daily living to keep them out of the long-term care. With the capable model, it's looking for people to age in place by providing services that deal with that loss of function when they know you can't do anything to improve the function. For instance, in the capable model, there would be a nurse aide or a PCA or somebody in the home to help. If in the capable model, their monies are spent on remodeling to make a bathroom more accessible We make sure that a house is wheelchair accessible, that the doorways are wide enough, that there is a ramp, that the tub is gone and a walk-in shower is replaced. So the capable model looks at making up for losses of functioning rather than just trying to get people as functional as possible, although it does both. So this is nurse-led, it's interdisciplinary, it started in Maryland, and it's now in 32 sites. And the great thing about it is it helps people maintain their dignity, live in place, and it's has relatively low costs, and the savings help to fund it because long-term care is very expensive. And for states, I mean, Medicare has caps on long-term care, but when somebody spends down and doesn't have any money left, they go on Medicaid in the states. That's a state insurance pot. So the state's using those Medicaid funds to place somebody in a long-term care facility. It's cheaper for them to help stay in their home, in the community. The second case study, if you read it, it talks about the incremental journey to full practice authority for Virginia nurse practitioners. Basically, the legislation to allow nurses to become advanced practice nurses in Virginia was signed in 1975. At that time, both you were licensed by both the Board of Nursing and the Board of Medicine. You had to get a certification, which you still do, to be licensed as an advanced practice nurse. But there was gradual expansion of prescriptive authority, or the ability to prescribe medication. And initially, you had it had huge supervision from a physician, and incrementally less supervision has been required. It's more collaborative practice agreements. Well, in 2016, the APRNs in Virginia tried to get full practice authority, and it got shot down by the medical organization in the state. They brought it back, and instead of focusing on their full practice authority, what they focused on was that there was a shortage of family practice and internal medicine doctors, and that advanced practice nurse with more autonomy could fill the hole so that people have access to health care. So access to health care was much more palatable and much harder for the Virginia Medical Association to fight. So it reduced their barriers. Now, if they have 5 years of full-time practice or 5,000 hours in Virginia, they can apply for an autonomous license where they don't have to have a collaborative practice agreement. But that was from 1975 to like 2000. I can't remember if it was 18 or 19. It took over 50 years for them to get where they wanted to go. And, but it was slow and steady, that incremental change. Models and dimensions. Just like we as nurses have theorists and models, nursing models of care delivery, so does political science. And some of the aspects of these models are below. Actors are people that are motivated policy entrepreneurs, which is described in the book. It's people who are just trying to get policies accomplished. The activists, other representatives of professional groups and organizations, these are the people acting to try to get things onto the agenda. Ideas, when people share norms and values, it is more likely that they will get issues on the policymakers' agenda. This means you just don't go to your local congressman. You find somebody who backs the the issues that you are trying to push forward as a solution. You wouldn't, if somebody only cared about the military, you wouldn't take a healthcare issue that you were trying to get, a solution to and trying to get put on the agenda to make a policy about. You wouldn't choose that congressperson to go to. You would find somebody who is interested in healthcare. There are even some senators and congress people that are former nurses. You would find somebody who had shared norm and values to your issue. Interests. Well, you have to realize that the policymakers have interests. Unfortunately, a big one is to get reelected. So they're not going to try to pass something that would be unpopular with their constituents. They look for economic benefit. They may look at national security, advancement of a profession, things that shape the behavior of policymakers and those who work to influence them. You want to look for those interests. And remember, I don't know if you have watched any political television shows, but it's not just the president. It's not just the congressperson. It's the aides and the people that work with them that need to be influenced also, because they help to get things to the attention of the actual office holder. And then institutions. There are organizational structures, rules, and procedures that you need to be aware of, and they shape the expectation of those of us trying to get things approved. They're going to shape what the expectation, the preferences, and the behaviors of everyone involved, whether it be the congressperson or the activist. Knowing the institution is part of knowing how to get on the agenda. The Kingdon model is just one model of how issues get onto the political agenda and how alternate solutions might be devised. It shows that there are three streams: the policy, problem, and political. And for something to move forward, there needs to be what they call a focusing event, which causes the overlap of two of those three streams for a window of opportunity or a policy window to open to enable you to move something forward through that window of opportunity onto an agenda. A focusing event is generally something that disrupts the status quo. It may be a major hurricane and floods like we had in the Southeast. It may be an election like we just had. That could be something that ramps things up. Random. When Ronald Reagan was elected into his second term, he won every state except Minnesota. So he won 49 of 50 states. And of course, the popular vote, and that was called a mandate. So immediately when he took office for the second time, he tried to push through his political agenda, because he considered that he could say that there was a mandate from the people because so many people voted for him. The importance of contextual dimensions. You always have to take things into context, no matter what you do. And politics and agenda, getting on an agenda is the same thing. These are factors which influence which policies get put on an agenda. The political context that we deal with in our country is our fragmentation of power. Because when we were founded as a country, we did not want one person basically rule, as would happen if you had a king like Great Britain did, or Italy did. So we created a system where there were three branches of the federal government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. the legislative branch is cut in two also. It's not just one house or two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So the power is fragmented. Then you go even further, and there's states' rights. So each state has its own executive, legislative, and judicial branch. So that's further fragmentation of that power. There's an economic contest, scarcity. How much money do we have? Do we have enough to enact all of the policies that we wish to? Healthcare is always a consideration. It's considered important, not just because legislators are interested in the health of its citizens. It's because healthcare is about 18% of our gross domestic product, so it's very important to the economy. So healthcare needs to be successful for the economy to be successful. And unfortunately for many, that's why we can get things done, because they consider the economy rather than people's lives. Social and cultural values, what is culturally acceptable. If they think that the idea or solution is not going to be in with the social and cultural norms and values of their constituency, a politician won't be there to help get things passed or put on an agenda because they want to get reelected. And there's an administrative context. Who's going to implement a policy? How a policy will be implemented? What's going to happen? Do we have the resources to make sure that it's taken care of? So these contexts are all important factors to policies getting moved forward and placed on an agenda. Target populations and issue characteristics are also factors. What are the characteristics of the groups affected by the policy? And there are 4 population categories here. Advantaged means that they have they're politically influential, plus they are viewed favorably by either society or the legislators. Contenders are politically influential, but they are they're strong politically, but they are viewed negatively, not positively. Dependents are politically weak, but they are viewed positively. And deviants are both perceived as negatively and are politically weak. Unfortunately, it's kind of like they're saying, does the target group deserve the policy? They kind of try to, in their minds, separate things into something called deservedness. An advocacy coalition frameworks, it's based on the idea that interest groups organize in policy communities around a particularly policy domain, so they're working together. It also presumes that most policies making is very complex, and it's also very gradual. They see the participants in policymaking as relatively stable. The iron triangle, which it's a little drawing in your book, it shows at the top is like Congress or the legislature, whatever, legislature. And then on one corner, there are lobbyists and the other bureaucracy. And there's back and forth between these 3 points to try to get policies enacted. And then they also take in the information from academics, researchers, and journalists who have great knowledge and specialize in the policy. Path dependency, whoops. Sorry about that. Path dependency sees agenda setting and policy creation as occurring in a context that is significantly shaped by existing policy. It means you need to know feedback patterns between economic and political events and policy respondents that have unfolded over longer periods of time. You need to see what happened in the past in regards to a policy similar to the one you are advocating for. And it's much harder to pass laws or create policies when they're in opposition of existing policies and laws. So, and also because change is often incremental, you need to realize that what happened before, you need to build upon it to move forward. It's like we said, you're not jumping from point A to Z, you're going A, B, C, D. Punctuated equilibrium, that focuses on those processes that produce radical change. Excuse me. Some things can lead to rapid change, like massive shifts in public understanding of problems, major crises, dramatic election outcomes, like I described with Ronald Reagan, a major crisis, like the fires. COVID is an example. All sorts of policies and agenda items were pushed through very quickly during COVID because it was considered a medical emergency. Okay, the next case study in your book is the Affordable Care Act. It was passed in March 2010. As it says here, its roots lied in the failed efforts of Democrats and President Clinton in comprehensive health care reform in 1993 and 1994. What is important about the ACA is they looked at what happened back in 1993 and 1994. At that time, the Clinton administration was going for broke. They were going for full universal health care and pushing for it. And they got shot down. And they lost seats in the midterm elections, and because they really thought that this was an important thing, but unfortunately, it was not considered important to the people in Congress, enough people in Congress at that time. But when the Obama administration and Democrats were coming around to try to get the Affordable Care Act enacted, they looked to see what happened then. And that's why the Affordable Care Act, Obama's administration did not say, we're going to go for universal health care. They looked to patient protection, which basically is that pre-existing conditions can't prohibit you from being insured. Insurers can't deny you coverage because of pre-existing conditions. That was the big thing. And then the Affordable Care Act part was to make it mandatory that people have health care and to create a marketplace where you leveraged a bunch of people to get lower prices, just like a business who had 1,000 employees that they're insuring would get a lower price. Well, the government tried to say, these are all our people. We're going to get all these people to buy health insurance, so give us a lower price so that it can be more affordable for them. Lastly, litigation. Filing lawsuits can affect change. Sometimes it's to because you feel a law was broken. Sometimes it's to create a new legal precedent related to a law. A big thing along with lawsuits to affect change is whistleblowing. That's when you report if you find wrongdoing or misconduct, and that leads to corrective action. The thing about whistleblowing is people are afraid to come forward because of repercussions. So there are some whistleblowing protections that have been created. It's argued that as nurses, that when you look at the code of ethics, that if we see wrongdoing, that we need to report it no matter what to affect change and improve outcomes. So nurses and traditionally professional healthcare workers bring a unique and trusted perspective to policy deliberation and development because of our training, our values, our ethics, our experiences. We can use our numbers to our advantage, although we often do not, because we are 4 million. We're very, very different, and that's part of the problem. And it takes something big usually for us all to align and lockstep to move forward. And to work politically, we need to know what gets on policy agendas in health systems and legislative settings, and how to get policymakers to pay attention to us. Thank you, and that's the end of video 1.